There was a statement from this pig over here, the Israeli Minister of Genocide, Israel Katz. This barking pig, a barking dog pig, something like that, said the following, that Israel's great challenge after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all of Hamas's tunnels in Gaza directly by the IDF and through the international mechanism to be established under the leadership and supervision of the United States. This is the primary significance of implementing the agreed upon principle of demilitarizing Gaza and neutralizing Hamas of its weapons. I have instructed the IDF to prepare for carrying out the mission. So this pig is confirming that the genocide is actually going to continue after they receive their prisoners of war. Yet, this isn't really being criticized how it should be globally. Even some of the mediators, no one is even talking about these statements coming from these people, confirming that they're going to continue down their genocidal path afterwards. But how will it look like? So we know what Israel is capable of doing. We know that these people don't really belong into the human family. I don't know if they're like made of something else, based on all of these crimes that all of you have seen in the past few years inside of the Gaza Strip. But chances are there could be a different type of situation if this goes ahead, which could be as follows. The intense part of the genocide and the barbarity of Israel and the hundreds being massacred every single day is going to end, and we're going to enter a phase of Israel having certain operations in Gaza that will still kill innocent people, but not in the same intensity, which is again an ongoing genocide. That's what it's going to mean under any sort of pretext. So Israel's war will continue, Israel's genocide will continue, but not at the same level as before. Meaning, well, we can potentially have a situation somewhat like Lebanon, where, people are back in the south, for example, and there are things moving on, but Israel can carry out strikes and go ahead with these strikes under any sort of pretext, and whether they are civilian or facilities to do with regular day-to-day stuff or anything of the sort. The attack that Israel conducted yesterday on Lebanon, it was against a civilian location. Nothing to do with, not that they could prove even previously that they had like targeted an infrastructure or whatever, all of that garbage that they say. But yesterday, civilian target, killing innocent people again. What does that prove? That proves everyone right. That proves the people right. The people who were skeptical, who were very doubtful, who are actually saying, no, that we need to continue this pressure on this entity of terror up until its demise as an ethno-state apartheid entity. That sentiment is the right sentiment. The right sentiment is the sentiment of the millions who were in the streets in this weekend, all across Europe and the whole world, yet are still being faced by complicit governments and authorities in denial, busy covering up these depraved murderers of Israel and their ongoing genocide inside of the Gaza Strip, and somehow selling the notion that a ceasefire deal means that everything is going to end. How are things looking like internally with these reports between Benjamin Netanyahu especially, and also the IDF chief of staff? Because Netanyahu isn't confirming that the war is going to end. His poodle, the genocide minister, Katz, is saying that, there's going to be another phase after the prisoners of war get released. The IDF chief of staff, on the other hand, is saying something else. So this is one of the recent reports in Israel. Chief of Staff said we defeated Hamas. And he was concluding the operation, and he summed up the war, and he told everyone that that's it, okay, we're done, we defeated Hamas. And we finished the war, and he came up with this report, and he said he even had, an underlying criticism of the political echelon led by the war criminal Netanyahu, saying that we stuck to our guns by prioritizing the prisoners of war. Yet, Benjamin Netanyahu is saying the campaign is not over. If you have a prime minister, a war criminal, a wanted war criminal, saying the campaign is not over and our enemies are gathering their powers against us again, and his barking poodle genocide minister is saying that the war is going to resume after they release the prisoners of war and they're going to focus on the infrastructure of the Palestinian resistance to demilitarize Hamas, as he's saying. What are we waiting for exactly? What is the world waiting for? And should the mediators now fail in this supposed pressure that they're applying against Israel, simultaneously, according to reports with the United States, or telling the United States to apply pressure on Israel, then we at least need a declaration. We need transparency. Stop hiding these things from the people. This case concerns the global human race. This is no longer a Palestinian cause. The genocide in Gaza concerns humanity as a whole. Why? Because we have people all across the world supporting the rights of the Palestinian people, supporting equal human rights, supporting justice, supporting punishment for this entity of terror. And we also have powers and mouthpieces all across the world. Doesn't matter how little they are in number, by the way, compared to the people supporting human rights and the Palestinian case. They actually justified genocide. And they said that this genocide isn't actually a genocide, and Israel has a right to, and they're regurgitating Zionist propaganda, and they're getting paid $7,000 a post by Netanyahu and his infinite cash cows, willing to spend all of that money. Now they're also purchasing more social media outlets, more mainstream media outlets too, to try and control the narrative and hope to counter the campaign and revolution globally against these people. So it's a point of no return, really. A point where there is a slight de-escalation, but like we were saying from the beginning, really, if there is a de-escalation, it's going to be temporary, short-lived, and the battle continues, or it continues to remain open up until the demise of the state of Israel. What we have now is another de-escalation. It doesn't look like anything is going to stop if Benjamin Netanyahu is confirming that it didn't finish, and if his poodle war minister, genocide minister, is saying that they're gonna have another campaign after they release the prisoners of war. Well, what's gonna happen after that? I mean, from Netanyahu's perspective, so long as he has an America that supports him in the form of the administration, even if there were reports of certain disagreements, by the way, leaked between him and Donald Trump or certain elements within the Trump administration, he's still going to be enabled. We're seeing heavy keenness from many European administrations and governments to support Israel and whitewash its image and, make it appear as if it's something behind us. And he would be able to continue down this escalatory path with more destruction. The required action, well, a continuation of all of the activism to actually stop the genocide, because it hasn't stopped. What Israel is actually trying to do is have a proxy war inside of Gaza from the areas that they withdrew from, in the hope that they would expand it to become a much bigger internal conflict. That's not working very well, because although Israel just withdrew from some of these parts several days back, the Palestinian resistance is in full control, and they're chasing the collab hubs everywhere inside of Gaza, even in areas that are still under Israeli occupation inside of the Gaza Strip and are supposed to be liberated at a later stage. Israel is supposed to be withdrawing from later on. And again, they're not confirming that this operation is going to end, whether the IDF chief of staff has a problem with it or not, by the way. Because the previous IDF chief of staff also had a problem with Benjamin Netanyahu. And Netanyahu, despite his criticism at the time, whether to go into Rafah or not, went ahead with it, and the genocide army went in. So if tomorrow Netanyahu is still in power, he still has his coalition members, he orders the Israeli army, regardless of how defeated and humiliated and exhausted it is, to go back into the Gaza Strip and continue this operation. They're going to have to go. No one's going to do anything about that. They wouldn't be able to challenge him. Yeah, probably less momentum, whatever, but he was losing momentum from the population anyway, who were asking him to focus on the prisoners of war from the beginning, release them, and then potentially have a campaign. Let alone that this man is also led by these messianic delusions and religious fantasies, you know, having the greater Israel too. And it bothers him that he didn't succeed in Gaza. Yeah. Even that document that was released by Trump after Netanyahu's amendment had an embedded clause that confirmed that the Palestinian people will remain in Gaza and will not be forced out of it. And everyone who goes out will have a right to go back. Now, how far is the American administration going to go with them? Trump flexed muscles. He tried to show, the people who were criticizing him from within, the MAGA clan, that, oh, look, I'm putting my foot down against Benjamin Netanyahu. Look, I forced him into a ceasefire. Today, he said the war is over. The war is over. And he's coming to the Israeli Knesset, reportedly, to have a speech, then sign this ceremony in Egypt to say that this war actually ended. How is that actually going to work if you have a side declaring that they're not going to be ending the war? How? The Egyptian side is trying to invite as many parties as possible. We've heard so far that 20 countries are going to come, European countries and countries from all across the world. They even invited Iran, but the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, he had a response. He said, basically, we appreciate the invitation that's coming from Egypt, but we're not going to be participating and meeting those who attack the Iranian people, threaten them, and impose sanctions on them. So whilst we do appreciate the Egyptian president's invitation, we're not going to be sitting with these people who conducted a war against us and are imposing sanctions on us. Basically, in a nice way, we're not going to be part of this party that includes grand hypocrites. Although they said, we support the anything to end the genocide, and we also support prosperity and peace. But it's not like these people they're speaking about are supporting any of these things. As a matter of fact, they support the opposite. They support death and destruction, like their little neo-colonial front. Death and destruction. This is what they understand. If they were genuine and sincere about ending the genocide, they would have taken concrete measures to stop it. By speaking about this embargo and boycott and punishment and some sort of enforcement against this entity of terror from the beginning. Not pretend like they want a ceasefire and they want peace, and then, put the poison in their twisted tongues with their claims that they want to end the war. That doesn't help anyone. So, judging by the latest developments, it looks like things are more complicated, more uncertain. There are no solid guarantees here, even with this initial ceasefire that took place. And the only solution is to keep up the pressure, to keep up the international pressure, to keep up the public pressure, to keep up the protesting, to keep up the demand from the complicit governments who took part in this genocide and are still covering up for Israel, who are not doing anything to enforce action against Benjamin Netanyahu. Because unlike previous manufactured sympathy that came from the top down, and people tried to impose it on us 24/7, nothing genuine about it. Now we have a ground roots movement globally. And this ground roots movement, this global movement, nothing is going to stop it. Not a fake agreement, not these empty promises, not just talk and no action, and not a status quo where a murderous, infanticidal, genocidal entity can get away with whatever it's done simply by saying, oh yeah, we will get into an agreement. And their neo-colonialist sponsors from other capitals get away with trying to say that, oh yeah, look, we supported the peace and we're going to have a board with a new mandate led by Donald Trump and Tony Blair. Tony Blair, who killed 1 million Iraqis and went against his own people. Biggest protests in the history of Britain against the war in Iraq, yet he went away like a little dog during the Bush administration time. Killed 1 million Iraqis, made fortunes, still making fortunes and looking to make more fortunes. The Palestinian people will spit you if you try and come and have another mandate. They will spit you out. Trump was even having these delusions of having a Trump statue in Gaza, a golden Trump statue. It will be the public toilet in Gaza if he dares. Yet some people are trying to entertain that idea, by the way. Do you know that? Recently, one of the most senior advisors to the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, Hussein al-Sheikh, he actually met Tony Blair. That's the Palestinian Authority for you. He met with Tony Blair. What shall we call him? What, the new Head of mandate, Tony Blair. The peace board. He met with him. I mean, that's a humiliation. That's so low, such a low act. A senior figure in the Palestinian Authority sitting with the man that is being pushed for a position of this new head of neo-British colonialist mandate in Britain. British American, you know. Trump Blair this time, Ameritish, as I called it in the previous video, the Ameritish mandate, not the British mandate this time. Shows you how detached these people are from the Palestinian people. I mean, unfortunately, we have some Palestinian voices going astray so hard, really, really hard, these people. Totally lost the plot. You're sitting with the man who looks at you and views you as nothing. Tony Blair made blatant racist statements about people from all across the world, especially Arabs and Muslims. He described Islam as cancer before. He looks at you from an arrogant, racist way. He doesn't look at you as an equal. What do you think Tony Blair cares about you? Or any of these people? They despise you. They look at you as if you are nothing. Yet these people go and sit down with them, thinking that they don't mean nothing. You don't mean nothing to them. And anyone who has the audacity to suggest foreign authority against the will of the people who were just facing genocide and letting the culprit get away with this mass murder and slaughter isn't even worthy to be looked at, let alone to be sat with. And plus, are these people that delusional that this is going to somehow work? Do you think the people of Gaza, do you think everyone, every child, every infant, the maimed infants who were maimed one day after they were born in Gaza, knowing that they were maimed by the only Jewish state on earth, do you think that they will accept this country moving forward and anyone trying to impose their will on them? Do you think that this population, over 2 million people who went through a genocide in Gaza, are not going to think of how they can hurt their enemy really badly in the future? Do you think that all of this trauma is going to evaporate and that they're going to forgive their butchers tomorrow? You're delusional. You're really delusional if you think that. Whether you're from that part of the world or from anywhere in the world. You've just created a new generation that is laser focused on erasing this depraved entity from the face of the earth. As a matter of fact, like I said before, Israel itself, by its actions in the past 2 years, let alone what it's done before, has recruited the global population, anyone with an ounce of conscience and integrity and humanity and respect and value for life and an ounce of good and a pair of eyes and a functioning moral compass and a brain, on a mission. They put them on a mission that isn't going to end up until the entity that creates or created this ends. And now, by the way, it's far bigger, way far, more far-reaching than the beginning. Now we're not just talking about Israel here. We're talking about their extension. Tony Blair being part of that extension. Other establishments and governments part of that extension. Mainstream media part of that extension. So-called independent journalists who get hefty checks from their Zionist masters, the stooges of Zionism. All of these people are on the radar. And trust you me, this isn't going to be ending anytime soon. Not only on the ground, but from a global perspective. You see what Donald Trump did now, what the United States administration did with this supposed ceasefire agreement, or the peace deal, or the peace board led by genocidal, racist murderers, is a life rope for Israel. They wanted to save Israel's image from its own actions. They loved it when the Jewish state was implementing apartheid under the radar. Why? Because they weren't speaking about it. You know, the poor little Jewish state can do whatever it wants against the Palestinian people. They can kill people every day, you know, administrative detention, starve 2 million in Gaza for 2 decades almost, imprison them. And we just won't talk about it. I mean, what is it going to change? It's not going to do anything. They liked that. They liked the version of Israel that murders you and says it wants peace. And, you know, there's negotiations, there's talks, and things can be delayed. And tomorrow it's going to be better. And hopefully, you know, we have a peace plan. And maybe by 2267, there will be some progress. Now, what Netanyahu has done, coming and basically stripping Israel of its layers, the layers of deception. He completely stripped Israel, thankfully. Netanyahu and his cabinet and his his supporters, his depraved army, they came and they stripped Israel. They showed us exactly how they are, unapologetically, with their intentions. We want to murder children, kill all of their infants, everything, all of that. And, you know, what can Tony Blair do and Donald Trump do? I mean, you know, they're struggling so much. So many of them, oh, you know, let's have a small ceasefire here and there, and let's do this, so that, because we're concerned about, you know, your image globally more than you are. We don't have a problem with anything to do with your racism or killing these Arabs and Muslims or whatever it is, because we've done far more before. It's not a problem. But the problem that we have is you showing your true self to the world and waking the whole population up. And we don't want problems internally. Well, guess what? You created an ongoing problem. By not practicing democracy in your own countries, you hypocrites. You'll have 1, 2, 3 million people talking and asking and activism, and they'll go against them. In Germany, they will beat them for wearing a red color and accidentally wearing a green bracelet or something. Beat them, beat the living daylight out of them. Britain going to prescribe an organization that is taking action against a genocidal entity and welcoming the president of the genocide state amidst a genocide. So much for your values that you've been preaching. So we're very far from it. As a matter of fact, there's a big chance that it could get worse for several reasons. Number one, if Benjamin Netanyahu thinks that he's going to get into trouble, and the formula that he's going ahead with now might just about protect his coalition up until he feels that it's the right moment to get into a new election, because we have elections are set for October 2026. Everyone knows that if there is a full deal, Netanyahu would have to have a date for an early election. Should he not declare the ending of the war, he'll have an open check. He'll have an open check from his allies in his government to continue. He'd be able to keep them there up until one of the two, the victory, or a clear, he needs to show a clear, decisive victory, and that's something that he hasn't been able to prove so far, by the way. Because don't forget, Israel, by military definition, lost. You've heard that right. By military terms, Israel lost this war, despite all of the barbarism, and the Palestinian side won. By military definition, if you do not achieve your military objectives, you failed. The Palestinians, by surviving, made them fail and won. Doesn't look good on him. Iran's back and forth thing didn't look great. Lebanon, the Lebanese resistance is refusing to disarm. Gaza, supposedly the smallest area, unbelievable. I'm telling you, this case, the Palestinian resistance, that's going to be a lesson for generations to come. Even in 1,000 years, they're going to be telling you about these days. And people in 1,000 years, if humanity lasts up until then, and the lunatics of the world don't take us into oblivion at one point, they're probably not going to believe what they'll think it's like fairy tales. We hope that technology would be able to protect all of this data that we gathered in the past 2 years and all of these recordings. Some of these clouds, some of these databases are under the sea. So maybe if everything is destroyed over the ground, maybe some of these databases will survive in 1,000 years. If Netanyahu doesn't get this absolute, either absolute victory in Gaza or sell it to the public somehow, although they're booing him, and there are hundreds of thousands. Yesterday he was humiliated when Steve Witkoff was mentioning his name when they were in the middle of a protest to support the release of the prisoners of war. They were booing him. He was humiliated. If he doesn't twist that to go into the next elections, he's going to have to have something much bigger to show everyone, look, that was the decisive thing, because he did not reach anything decisive in Gaza. That, if that leads him to have this popularity somehow and confidence that he will win the next elections, whether early elections or semi-early elections, he might go to it. Apart from that, he has another trick up his sleeves. And that trick is eliminate the process of democratic elections in Israel. And that's no fairy tale, by the way. Several senior figures in Israel already warned from this scenario. Benjamin Netanyahu is already the longest serving Israeli prime minister. He went into this position by exhausting the whole country with 6 elections in 7 years. wasting billions, shutting down the economy, everything for his own sake, with very minimal coalitions, just so he can remain in power and run away from his criminal cases. What is the solution? Turn Israel into a full-blown authoritarian entity that doesn't even have democratic elections. Do you think that that's out of the question? That's not out of the question. Why should you think that? Why should anyone think that? This man didn't leave a crime that he didn't commit in the past 2 years. And he also went on with this genocide despite hundreds of thousands protesting in the streets in Israel against him. What makes anyone think that he wouldn't turn Israel officially into an authoritarian entity and end any elections? He already sacked anyone who showed a level of opposition and challenge to him in the military establishment. Yes men surrounding him everywhere. The Israeli Shin Bet, the IDF chief of staff, the defense/genocide minister, all of that. Well, he can come up tomorrow and say that that's it. We don't need elections. And we don't need elections because our enemies are waiting for the elections to come and destroy us, and they're going to use these elections at one point to come at us all at once, and anyone who may come after me and stop this campaign that I was promised and that I'm willing to fulfill to destroy Israel. They'll use that to destroy our country. Therefore, I need to be the eternal king of Israel.